Retirement means different things to different people. For some, it is the culmination of a lifetime of working and a chance to relax and take rest. There are others who would want to pursue their passions that they haven't been able to all along their life. Some would steer towards religious or spiritual practices, some are drawn to social work, some would find their calling in teaching and mentoring, and there would be some who would want to give back to society in various forms. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm and enthusiastic welcome to our new episode of our Dialogue with the Veteran series. Today's discussion is going to be centered on retirement preparedness and financial planning. And to talk about this important aspect of our life, we have a guest who has done a lot of work in financial wellness and the area of retirement. He is the Chief Executive Officer at PGIM India Asset Management, the world's 11th largest asset manager. A veteran with over 2 decades of experience, is a much sought after speaker at various conferences and forums. He has contributed to key industry bodies. With a grateful heart, I would like to welcome Mr. Ajit Menon. And without any further delay, let us embark on a meaningful conversation with the veteran.
Good afternoon, Ajit. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation to come on this discussion about your journey, about mutual funds, about what you think the investors should do, and various other things we are going to discuss in between.
Suresh, it's my pleasure entirely, and thank you very much for inviting me to this chat. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Ajit, and looking forward to a wonderful discussion. I'm sure it will definitely be a revealing discussion today, again, like always. Yeah. So, the first thing I want to ask you, you have been in the mutual fund industry itself for a long time. Before that, you were in other places, but mutual fund industry itself, you have been there for a long time. There have been major changes in the industry itself, in the investor behavior. The government thinking itself has changed during this time in terms of the digital initiatives and things like that. And then the industry again has reconfigured itself, and the industry now is at, I think, about 47 lakh crores. So
That's
can
right.
you just quickly take us through all these things and where we are? So can you just quickly take us through this?
Sure, Suresh. That'll be a good one to actually start with. So, as you know, I have a little over 29 years of experience now, of which little over 22 has been with mutual funds. And I was exposed to mutual funds during a stint that I did with Standard Chartered Bank way back in '97, as the bank sort of introduced mutual funds to high net worth investors. Very quickly, I fell in love with the aspect of mutual funds and how it forces you to be keeping in touch with what's happening around you all the time. So, in mutual funds and in investing, especially when you're exposed to equity funds, so many variables that impact it from all of what's happening all over the world. And that sort of excited me. And I wanted to be on the other side of the fence. And I joined DSP Merrill Lynch way back in 2000. Was there for about 16 years, and then a short stint at Tata Mutual Fund for a year and a half before I joined PGIM, what's PGIM today, in 2017. So it's been a big journey, and very happy for it. And the changes, as you say, that we have seen is that I think that one thing has remained constant, that for people who get exposed to equity and equity investing, the excitement of participating in something that while is not guaranteed but has great potential to make you returns, that excitement, I think, continues generation after generation. So in the early days in 2000, when I used to meet people, most of them were on the other side of 50 and 60, and wanting to, already doing equities through brokers and things like that, and then participating in mutual funds. Today, if you look at it, it's the entire spectrum, including those who are young and coming into a work life. But the excitement of participating in equities, sort of remains the same across generations. What has changed is obviously regulation, advisory practices, or the advisory approaches that have been there so far. And I would say that, some of the awareness has also seeped into a certain set of investors, maybe not all, but a significantly good set of investors as well. And I'll run you through a few of them. I think from a regulatory standpoint, what I've seen, Suresh, change is I see regulations like a pendulum. It sort of swings to spirit-based regulation, which let's say is the left-hand side swing. And, it sort of just defines the broad values and principles by which people should behave and act. And that's during times of peace, when everything is nice and hunky-dory and there's no crisis or scam going around, right? And then the pendulum can swing all the way to the right and change from being a spirit-based regulation to a rule-based regulation, where everything is spelled out, what you can do, what you can't do, what you need if you want to do something, etc., etc., etc. So very black and white rules and regulation. And I think that the early days, the pendulum was on the left. Things were good. I'm looking at the 2000s, post the tech bubble and things like that. And, I'm talking 2003 and beyond. You saw regulations were reasonably open-ended. It gave you a good framework to operate in and things like that, business models that could operate. And then you had, I think, the decisive shift from the GFC, the great financial crisis that happened in 2008, and then has continued in some form or format, through the 2013s, and then you got the pandemic really in 2020 that hit us, which is quite massive. And rules have got stricter and stricter and stricter and stricter and black and white, and it's become very rules-based. So that's the shift that I have seen in regulation. A lot of people do talk about the fact that despite the fact that regulations have become so tight, the industry has only grown from something like a 10 lakh crore, 10 years ago to now 47 lakh crore. That's a huge growth that you're seeing. I think that it's only correct in part. The other part is the wealth creation story of India and Indians in general, that there has been a rise in per capita incomes, and there have been more and more people, therefore, participating in the industry. And that has actually also contributed much more to the growth of industry, so far. In terms of advisory practices, what has changed is, much of what we saw in the beginning and what I saw in the beginning was pretty much like a typical real estate broker. Take everything to everybody, show everybody. If you don't have it, take a key from some other fellow broker, but don't lose the client. Just make sure that you can show them everything. So it was more a show and tell, kind of atmosphere. I think advisors have evolved, and now the advisory-based practices have increased, of course, as the RIA licenses began and has evolved in itself. There have been a lot more people who are very, embedded and passionate about the right approach and way of doing financial advice growing. We would love to see it grow much, much bigger. Right now, it's a smaller piece, but it's a very significant piece, because I think it does set a lot of benchmarks for people's experiences. And to me, if you go back into this industry, and I'll conclude with this here, if you go back in the industry and you look at the way the industry has grown, all of us know intuitively that people tend to enter the markets when the market is rising and is showing you a positive wave. And many a time valuations are stretched at that time. And then people have a bad experience and then they fall off. And then new people come in at the next wave, and so on and so forth. It just keeps carrying on. I think that therefore, one aspect to keep in mind of a growth of a practice or the industry is the experience the industry gives its customers and consumers, in our case, investors. And I would just say that if I were to go back in my career 22 years and look at people, if they have invested for that long term, their experience has been fantastic. So that naturally brings in more and more people. So to me, the advisory practice is going through that evolution stage where I am now beginning to meet people who have an advisor who's built a plan for them and is extremely happy that they've got a plan that they're working to, and it's not a random do-it-yourself kind of approach. And as these experiences compound and people talk to relatives and friends about that experience, I think this practice will grow much, much bigger. But that might be a separate conversation to have. I think I've seen all of these changes. Consumers, yes, I do see more people buying when there are dips in the marketplace now compared to before. Also, the SIP, as we all know, the systematic investment plan, the way that has grown in this industry means that awareness has taken root to a large extent for people to start participating. So a lot of positives there. And we are still, I feel, at the tip of the iceberg when we think about the penetration levels in developed countries versus us. So I'm quite confident that we will see this maybe more than 5 times the size that we have the industry today in probably the next 5 to 6 years.
Oh, I see. 5 times in 5 to 6 years. That's quite a prediction, boss. Very bold.
It is, and I can put some bit of math around it if you wish at some other point in the discussion.
Sure. No. That's a very bold prediction. I really wish that comes true. Yeah, wonderful. Boss, you are now leading PGIM. PGIM is, for people who do not know, is one of the top money managers in the world. You have donned various other hats. Now you are a CEO of PGIM. There are quite a few interesting areas in which PGIM is, working on, retirement being one of them. So we'll come to that retirement bit later. So what is your vision? What is your focus? What are the products and services that you now want to bring from your global stable into India, or kind of replicate that success which you have enjoyed globally into India?
For sure, Suresh. And, there are some discussions that I've had where I've heard that PGIM is the investment world's best kept secret. And I'm talking about this in most of the Western markets and colleagues that I speak to. It's not a very well-known brand. If you think about it, a lot of people may not have heard of PGIM, Prudential Global Investment Managers, which is the Prudential of the US. It's probably the 11th largest asset manager today in the world there. But Suresh, did you know that we are the 3rd largest real estate manager in the world?
Oh, I see. I didn't know that.
Egypt, yeah. Oh, and by the way, we are also the world's 3rd largest alternates manager.
Oh, I see.
Right, and we're hearing so much about alternates. Whether it's credit on the credit side of fixed income, whether it's about VC, PE, and various other aspects of the unlisted space, and we're the 3rd largest in the world. And we are only the 11th largest asset manager, right? So there's a lot more exciting things to come to India from PGIM, and it'll come in due course of time. But the vision is really to establish PGIM India as a very relevant player within the investment space, in the public and private investment space, so that as much as possible, my dream would be that every household, every investing household in India has some exposure to a PGIM product or solution. That's what we'd like to get to. So as a manufacturer today, we have mutual funds. We have a PMS license, which is doing extremely well, and we are growing over there. We've just got an AIF license, and we'll be launching our first alternate fund in the first week of October. And we also have a license to manage international money. So this would be customers from outside of India looking for investment expertise in India and giving us mandates to manage their money based on our track record. So those are the licenses we have in India. The only license that I don't have is the pension license. And once we turn profitable and we move a couple of years, we would want to get into that space as well. When it comes to the PGIM products and what we see globally and what we might think for India, PGIM's one of those managers which has a very unique model. And it's a multi-manager model. Not too many asset managers are constructed in a multi-manager model. A multi-manager model means that there are various single CEOs and divisions running. Real estate is one of them. Private credit is one of them. Quant is another one of them. Long equity with Jennison is one of them, so on and so forth. And that allows us to focus less maybe on cost efficiency from an organizational profitability point of view, but it allows us to be very customer focused, because you can house the right talent in the right place rather than mixing everything up under one structure and hoping to run something that works all the time. every single unit is building its own business and the best experts in their space. So I do think that while we represent retail mutual funds here, the opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, to build a real estate franchise in India through through rates, which a couple of them are already here in India, but it's about, origination, creation, collaboration to really bring out the value in real estate, all aspects of real estate, from the credit side to the equity side and the rental yield side, capital appreciation side, all of that put together. I think that's one space that we would be looking to keep exploring and deciding to bring that into India for Indian investors and advisors over a period of time. Alternates is going to be much earlier. Because alternate is a space that is already growing in India quite significantly. We already have our AIF license, as I said. So there is a possibility of collaborating to get that kind of intelligence to support us on the alternate side of the business. But to begin with, I would say that to look into the future, we would think not just of alternates, but also about real estate and about private credit. There's also private equity within PGIM. And today, since we have some of the global players already in India, I don't think PGIM will be far behind. But we are more focused around what value will we deliver to Indian investors, and then plan it properly as the years go by. So very exciting to have PGIM as the promoter, the sponsor, and the ability for us to bring a lot more in the investment space for Indian investors.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'm going to touch upon another point, which is a strong suit of PGIM, which is retirement. In fact, you people had done about 4 years back, if I remember right, you had done a survey on retirement and retirement preparedness, and how people are investing and preparing towards their second innings. You
Yes.
want to very quickly summarize that, what you found for the benefit of the viewers?
Sure, Suresh. Yes, and that's a personal passion, a subject for me as well when it comes to retirement. Yes, you're right. We did a survey in 2019. We published the result in 2020, October, just after the lockdowns and the pandemic had started. So it was based on data of 19, of course. And then, of course, we've done a new survey last year, and we'll be publishing the new report next month. So, again, October. So you will see a follow-on retirement readiness survey report for Indians based on what happened pre-pandemic and post-pandemic as well. So that will be very interesting to bring in.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to reveal some of the insights from the new report. It's going to be out soon. But if you looked at the space in general, Suresh, the kind of insights that we had as far as this topic is concerned, retirement is not a financial goal that people decide in some form of hierarchy based on what they're thinking and what financial goals they want. Retirement is a financial goal which is more dependent on surplus. So what the survey gave us as an insight is that all financial planning is, in some sense of the word, important goals also like retirement, is subject to the surpluses people have. And not too many people have those surpluses. I mean, you and I and some of the audience that is watching this will probably form 1% of India if our annual income is probably about, say, a number like 15 lakhs, which means that 99% of India has an income level of below 15 lakhs. And therefore, for them to look at, to survive and to live their daily lives with all the aspirations around, and then think about planning, is all subject to the surpluses that they can create. So if they can create a good habit, they can increase their savings and then have surpluses, then they would do it. Otherwise, what we've found is that most people in India, and this is the general population, they believe that if they have a corpus of 50 lakhs, they're good to go for retirement. Right? And I think it's a multiple of about 8 times of the income, average income that you will see. So if you looked at the weighted mean income of tax filers in India in 2014-15, it was roughly below 5 lakh. And of the last year's data, I think the weighted mean of income is roughly around, if I'm not mistaken, about 13 lakhs or so, 13 to 14 lakhs. So I think it's a journey that Indians are going through in terms of wealth creation and surplus creation. So when you don't have the surplus, you focus either on a single corpus and say, I just want a single corpus. I've not decided what I'm going to use it for. Will it be retirement? Will it be whatever? And then your emotions kick in to say the first priority is my kids. So it's kids and spouse and everything else before you reach retirement, right? Because, one believes that, you can keep working. So that was the first insight. Second insight that we got is that when you ask people about their sense of confidence when it comes to retirement, people who have some sort of secondary source of income were far more confident than people who didn't have a secondary source of income. So a secondary source of income is nothing but apart from your primary source, which might be your business or your, or your salary. Are you having some income coming from some investments or from some rental property or so on and so forth? So, or from some side business or hobby that you can monetize in the household. So I think that the second insight is, if you can create a secondary source of income, including with your investments, your confidence levels for feeling prepared around retirement goes up quite significantly. The third insight that we found is that people who live in joint families are far more financially secure as a feeling than people who live in nuclear families. As if, somebody's got my back. And as you know, India is going through this, like any other developing country, more nuclear families, and, the large family systems are now few and far between, as we see it, at least in the metros. Yeah. Nuclear families are becoming more and more financially anxious. And if you are part of a large family, even if you were, so the point here is, even if you're staying alone in a city and your family is in Baroda or Pune or somewhere else, but you're connected to your family and a large group of friends, you will, as an individual, feel far more confident about your money and your financial future than if you were a person who didn't have a large family or a large set of friends and was more isolated. So I think the human angle is an important insight that we got out of it. And I'll just stop with one more insight that we had, which is that a lot of employees said that, oh, well, my organizations do spend on me in terms of my health. There are yoga sessions and things like that. But we would love it if the employer were to help us around planning for retirement. Right? So if the employer stepped in to help people manage their financial anxiety, you would have far more productive employees. I mean, international surveys that we did in Prudential seem to suggest that 25% of the time, employees are not actually working, but, worrying about some financial aspect of their life, and it's affecting their productivity. In some cases, there are even larger percentages of people who say, I am actually not doing work, but I'm trying to figure out something related to a household financial issue or my personal financial issue. And so productivity can enhance if you can help employees reduce financial anxiety as an employer. So lots of good insights there in the first study. And I can say that we've got some very good insights in the second study as well. But I'm going to keep it away for now so that I can tempt you to bring me on again for a discussion so we can share that.
we'll surely come to that. But this is a wonderful revealing insight that people are so worried about their future that they are not able to focus on their work. And from an employer perspective, it is a great eye-opener that they need to also focus on the well-being of their employees post retirement. So, I mean, a great eye-opener that you have just spelled out.
Yeah. So it's more about employers helping their employees, whether they are young, middle-aged, or old, in matters of financial planning and helping them plan their plan for their retirement. So it's not just it's not about looking after employees after they're retired. Of course, many companies engage with employees on a continuous basis, but I think it's the journey. As people are working and having a career, I think that you are losing a lot of productivity if people are financially anxious. And as an employer, if you can bring in some way of helping employees understand their personal financial journeys, it will help them gain productivity. So absenteeism, for instance, Suresh, you can actually put a number to absenteeism, right? One work day lost. And a large percentage of absenteeism is because of financial issues. So you can imagine that if you start solving for that, how much of money can actually be saved by organizations.
Correct, absolutely. So, I mean, this is a very, very interesting, significant from another point of view. See, India over a period of time, over the period of last probably 20 years, we have been becoming significantly far more wealthier than ever before. And yeah, from your survey, it looks like even now people are still feeling very, very anxious, considering that there are many goals, a lot of aspirations, a lot of dreams. And
That's right.
I think in the context of this tremendous amount of wealth creation, which has happened till this point, and a tremendous amount of wealth creation which can potentially happen going forward, I think there is a need for financial advice. I mean, you require an advisor. Without that, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to manage on your own. You have a day job, you have a family. Along with that, you will have to manage the finances, which you may not really be very familiar with. So, I mean, in the context of that, SEBI has created a class of advisors to advise clients. But I think the regulations have tightened too fast in the industry before the industry has really developed. What do you think about this? What is your prescription for ensuring a healthy advisory industry so that it can really help the people at large, especially considering the anxieties which they are having when they are becoming significantly wealthy?
So, Suresh, I don't know whether, what I am thinking may be right or wrong. But if you remember earlier in our discussion, I said that the number or percentage of people in India who are having an income above 15 lakhs is probably just 1%. 15 or 20 lakhs is just 1%. Think about the government. If you are in the government, are you bothered about the 1% or the 99%? So you're bothered about the 99% first, right? And so much of the reform that you see the government and policymakers working on is to make sure that that 99% can have a good life, a good lifestyle, and solve for the problems that they face in life. And they can come to the 1% as well, but it's the 99% that will bother policymakers and governments. So to that extent, I would say that the fact that the regulators did not go the approach like in the UK, where they shut down distribution completely by saying it can only be fee-based distribution, is probably better for Indians, because it has left the basic advice through MFDs or mutual fund distributors open to many of these smaller individuals with smaller surpluses to start an SIP to invest. And I think the numbers for SIP and things like that speak for itself. But let's focus on the advisory practice. And, as you said about the regulations probably having tightened too fast, too soon, before giving time for things to settle. My own view is, like I told you earlier, regulations are a pendulum. So, I do expect the pendulum to swing back somewhere into neutral territory, where some of the advocacy that will be done by advisors and customers with SEBI will probably, and the governments will probably allow them to relax some of the more onerous parts of what the license requirements are. And that might just give rise to a lot more people feeling confident who are sitting on the sidelines or on the fence to approach this. Now, there's also the human tendency for people not to maybe cut a check and pay a fee separately. And I know that the regulator has been thinking about maybe a common platform where people can pay the fee to advisors using the regulator's common platform. So that will build more trust. To me, I think that the regulator can be faulted or credited for various aspects of what they do, but I think you can't solve the problem in that way. I think a lot more of evidence to the regulator moves the regulator for sure. And we've seen this in the recent past. When the regulator has the correct data and the evidence that things are moving in the right direction, they're willing to come to a more neutral path, possibly. So I do think that there is a need to showcase the experience of consumers who receive financial planning advice to the regulator. So what I mean is that if one were to survey all of the clients who are clients of registered investment advisors, or a large proportion of those clients, and if a report were to be constructed about, how that will look, the regulator is going to come out and say, you guys already have some best practices. I think that we should be encouraging this channel to get even bigger. So if you looked at the research that was done by the Financial Planning Standards Council, I don't know which year it was done, but they found that for people who paid for their advice versus those who didn't, 61% of people found that they had financial peace and financial security, as compared to 36% of the people, only, who felt that they were okay, for those who didn't have paid financial advice. If you looked at people who felt ready for retirement, 51% of people who had a financial advisor who went through a financial planning process with them felt confident about retirement. And those who did, that was 22% of people. So there's a stark difference in the value of advice. But do we know the numbers in India? The answer is no. And I think that, as forums of advisors come together to specifically do market research on consumers of financial planning as a process, and put that report together for the regulator on a consistent basis year after year to see the progress of how it's going, you're going to find that, very soon, maybe even the regulator might come and say, let's have a self-regulation here, rather than us doing anything. So I think there is some distance to travel. We could argue that we can move faster, but I do think that the focus is on the 99%. And I think as the experiences build up, the good experiences build up, you will find the pendulum swinging back into neutral zone.
Wonderful, wonderful, boss. Now I'm going to ask a related question. We have limited time, so this is probably going to be the last question. We talked about advisors, and you have rightly observed that probably the advisors are maybe serving the 1% or maybe the top maybe few percentage of the population. Investors are mostly served by the distributors of various products. Yeah. And many of them are also doing a good job. So the point is, as a CEO of an AMC, how do you inculcate the client-centric or client best interest approach among the distributors so that they do the right thing? It's okay that they are earning a commission from a principal, but they do the right thing. And from the overall society investors' point of view, it works wonderfully well. They're in a sense doing what the advisors are doing in their own way.
Yeah, there are two things there, Suresh. One is that if you really look at the evidence around building awareness, right, then there is probably research that suggests that building awareness by itself doesn't help at all, right? What helps is the design of your solution and the design of your product. So, what I mean by this is that I think that the science of financial advisory and of even for customers and advisors is firmly rooted in behavioral finance. And a lot of us, or maybe a lot of people in the market, focus on just numbers and the intelligence around number crunching and predicting the market, whereas it's a fuzzy logic of emotions and hormones and just the active bias that we have to do things. And I think the way that PGIM approaches it is that we have certain things which we, by design, therefore, rather than building awareness, by design, we will do or we will not do. And we do speak about it to advisors as well. So number one is that we do think that this business is about trust first and foremost. And trust is a very difficult thing to get from your customer. And we think that the route to trust is through transparency. So we try to be transparent, and wherever regulation will allow us, everything is transparent. For instance, our portfolios on our fixed income side for maturities up to 1 year is up on our website every day, 100% of it. Right? So you can see the whole portfolio, and if you feel unsafe about any paper or something that you're not familiar with, you choose not to invest. And my portfolios don't come out 1 month later or 15 days later. It comes every day. So that's transparency. The second thing is that we have pretty much stated that we will not be launching thematic funds. Right? Thematic funds have the ability to attract people in the short term, usually when the valuations are high, and then the customers have a bad experience 2 years or 3 years. So the other thing that we do really is that, we have more or less communicated to most of our partners that we won't want to launch thematic funds in any hurry. And the reason is because, people's experiences over a medium to long term get spoiled quite easily with thematic, when there is so much more depth to gain in just the diversified portfolios, as well as the things like hybrids and balanced advantage funds and things like that. So my belief is that if a brand has to influence a large set of advisors and distributors about being client-centric, the first thing is they need to demonstrate it themselves. They need to build it into the design of their own engagement with people, that this is how we deal with transparency, because we believe transparency leads to trust. This is what we will do and we will not do. And also the fact that we will focus more on practice management with advisors, where I personally, along with my colleagues, we build in systems and presentations to talk about how to manage customer expectations, how to think about the sequence of returns and the risk related to the sequence of returns, how to be a risk manager before you become an investment manager as an advisor, and things like that. So we put in those programs. In fact, I've recently hired a doctor in behavioral sciences in the company, and her role is going to embed behavioral science into the design of our communication, our features, our products, to review them. And even my investment team is listening to what kind of behavioral biases could creep in while making decisions. And so I'm very excited that I'm able to take this thought process one step ahead and have real talent to guide the way that we engage customers and distributors. And I'm hoping all of that makes a difference.
Yeah. Correct. Very good. I mean, so you're intentionally, you're trying to build in everything into your, I mean, the way you are architecting your products, the way you are training the people who are interfacing with the client, and then you are ensuring that experience to the client. Probably you are going to talk about ethics and client-centric behavior also while you're talking to the distributors.
Absolutely. I do have a presentation that says trust is equal to empathy plus vulnerability plus integrity plus competency plus credibility. Just 5 things. Okay. So empathy, vulnerability, integrity, competency, credibility. You need all 5. You lose one, you lose trust. So we try and train people around how to build these aspects into the practice.
Wonderful. Excellent. And your words of wisdom for the investor community at large?
Only one. People don't make their financial futures. They make their financial habits, and their financial habits make their financial futures. This was said by Mr. F.M. Alexander, who was an artist way back in Australia. So he basically said people don't make their futures, they make their habits, and their habits make their futures. So I changed that around to saying financial.
That tempts me to ask you one last question all over again. So what is that one habit which people should inculcate in themselves so that their financial future can change for the better?
Oh, having a trusted financial advisor. No doubt in my mind. Because money is emotional to all of us, and we end up having an action bias, which is that, anything that has high stakes, we tend to be very dramatically involved and take action when actually we shouldn't be. So the way to do that is to have a trusted advisor who can help you and guide you and the family through your financial journey. That takes the emotional bias out of it, and that reduces the probability of making errors. I'm myself a beneficiary of this. I have an advisor for the last 13, 14 years, and a big beneficiary of that process, and having a trusted advisor with me.
Excellent. Well put. Yeah, so thank you, Ajit. Thank you for this wonderful discussion. You have covered a lot of ground, lot of things for people to imbibe and mull and ponder over. I hope this has been very useful for all our investors.
I hope so too, and thank you so much for the honor and the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.